It's really just
the family of the maker of the AR-15 actually released a statement during this tragedy saying that is a military grade weapon that was always intended to be in military use.
Yeah, I saw that, and I think that's powerful. I mean, I think that this is such a complex case too. I mean, my understanding, and we're seeing all kinds of media reports all over the place. So, but my understanding is that the wife had a certain level of awareness about not just his demeanor, his behavior, his mental health status, but also his plans. Like, she drove him there several times. She took him to buy ammunition, lots of ammunition. Like, if that's not a red flag, I don't know what is. And so, I think we all need to understand that we all have to take responsibility in the world as we, walk through our lives every day, and understand that this is something that we all need to care about. It transcends race and sexual orientation and age and ethnicity and all of those things. But yeah, this case is so complicated, and I keep seeing things and red flags going off, and the idea that he was there repeatedly, the idea that he may have been on some of these gay dating apps, that he might have been gay or bisexual himself, and the role that internalized homophobia can play given the behavior of his parents and the rejection of his family and the homophobia. Like, this was a really very, very disturbed person in obviously a tremendous amount of pain, which excuses absolutely nothing. But again, if that person can walk into a store and get an A-15, that's a problem.
Well, in a broader conversation that I know that's happening on the national security level, that I'm sure it's not part of the LGBTQ narrative, but if there is, if we do finally come to a determination that ISIS-inspired propaganda did bring the individual to carry out these attacks, so they've been calling for attacks against Americans. We've seen, unfortunately, on foreign soil, members of the LGBT community have been outright executed by ISIS in terrible ways that we won't mention on air. So they have a strong hatred towards gays and the LGBTQ community. So if this turns out that there is a component of terrorism combined with hate against us, this is a complete game changer. This is going to be a different level playing field, because they are still calling for attacks against Americans, attacks during Ramadan. Obviously, our FBI intelligence officials are watching everything very closely and trying to prevent such attacks. But when you have the internet, as you just mentioned, with the wall-to-wall coverage, and we all have smartphones and tablets, ISIS has a reach beyond their borders through social media, through internet, through their YouTube videos, even with videos of Anwar al-Awlaki, who is now deceased. So very difficult.
No, that's absolutely
we have to put a lot of trust in our officials to keep us safe right now. But with Orlando happening and it was missed, it's hard to know where to put that trust. I've spoken with a lot of people that are just afraid. They're very afraid.
I mean, when I went to the Stonewall that Sunday, late afternoon, early evening of the shooting, the counterterrorism folks were there, and there's going to be increased police presence at New York City at the LGBT Pride Parade that the mayor's talked about, which is interesting because now it's bringing up other issues that we actually do need to talk about within our community. Like, I've heard from lots of folks that communities of color within the LGBT community are not super thrilled to see a huge police presence because of their relationship with law enforcement. So, and at the end of the day, all of those issues, all the intersections of all the issues that we have tried to get people to understand, cut across the boundaries of our community, because our sexual orientation, our gender identity has zero to do with our race, our age, our ethnicity, our economic status, or where we live geographically. So, we're like a microcosm of the entire population. And so that makes for the necessity to have discussions about intersectionality. What is it like to be an African-American transgender woman when you are part of a population within our community who is the highest target for hate crimes, that is, it's the highest risk for suicide, the lowest chances of, getting good employment and health risks, and so how do we have those conversations? I think this is forcing us to have those conversations in a way that we haven't before.
I've been having those conversations with guests, and one thing I can tell you, this weekend, for coverage for Gay News Radio, I attended Portland Trans Pride Parade. So there was a 1-hour rally where they had several guest speakers, and there was a very hairy moment. I unfortunately captured this on video. So while one of the speakers was speaking, we heard a voice screaming in the crowd, "Security," and it was I almost made it out on the first bit, but it was the second or third time, "Security, security," and then 2 voices, 3 voices, 5 voices, and then we saw people running, and the speaker said, "It sounds like someone's calling for security," and we saw people running, and then I saw what was coming towards us. So it was basically protesters, Westboro Baptist style, with hate speech on their posters, which I will not repeat on air, but they were headed directly for the Trans Pride March. And so some very brave souls that had been pre-designated as security ran, met them in the middle, and held them at bay, held them back from getting close to our group, which was several hundred strong. But it was really amazing that they staged a protest. They knew exactly when this Trans Pride Parade event was happening, and they were there to show up and propagate hate, and it was kind of scary. It got very hairy for a moment there, but it was nonviolent.
Well, it's an indication that those who have homophobic, transphobic, queerphobic sentiment are very emboldened and feel like they live in a culture where that's okay. Because even when I was at the Stonewall that evening, the night of the shooting, when the Muslim lesbian woman was speaking, she was basically saying, this isn't an LGBT issue, this isn't a Muslim issue, this is a human issue. And, I'm a New Yorker, and boy, I know a lot of New Yorkers have a lot of gall, but it can be really, really rude. But guy started screaming, "It is a Muslim issue, it is a Muslim issue." I'm like, really? You're going to start screaming that in front of thousands and thousands of angry queer people? Like, especially those 2 drag queens over there, because they're going to take you out. They're going to just pick you up and drag you down the street and get you out of here. It's really just extraordinary. And one thing I was heartened by was I saw in Orlando, because they actually reached out to several folks at the Westboro Baptist Church. We won't say the name of the website. I always say it's a typo. It's supposed to be God Hates Figs. But I've been dealing with them forever, and they are increasingly irrelevant. The media pays very little attention to them, but it's really painful to be, for example, at a funeral or even at a pride parade and, be there. I would never want my kid to see that kind of stuff, And so people dressed up as angels. They did the angel action, just like they did in Laramie in 1999 at the plea bargain hearing for Russell Henderson. And they made it, somehow they got from somebody who was involved, whether it was Jim Osborne or Romaine Patterson or someone, they got the schematics to use the PVC piping to make the really big angel wings, and they surrounded the Shirley Phelps Roper, Fred Phelps' daughter, who's now, since he passed away, she's sort of the lead of the family. And they blocked the sign so the families wouldn't see them. And they sing Amazing Grace, and they do all the things that I think, frankly, are the only smart response to that kind of hatred, I think. And it was really, really encouraging to see, and it totally went viral on like Facebook and Twitter and stuff. Folks were like, the angels are back, the angels are back. And a very good friend of mine, Jim Osborne in Laramie, was super heartened to know that their legacy kind of lives on because people remember it.
I saw images of this on social media. It's incredible.
Yep. That's what I remember seeing them the very first time as they came around the block in Laramie that day, and I'd never seen anything like it. And I said, that is the way to respond to that kind of hate. And they even wore earplugs, just like the angels in Laramie. It was really funny, so they wouldn't have to listen to their trash talk, which they're just horrific.
Yeah.
So that, like you said at the beginning, right? Like you said at the beginning. I mean, the level of support has been really heartening to see, both here and internationally. I had a lot of people reach out to me. I have a lot of family in Italy, and they all reached out to me just to see how I was doing, because they knew. It's not just because I'm an activist, but because they knew that you couldn't be part of the community or an ally and not care about what happened and not be affected by what happened. I mean, cried plenty of times in front of the TV last week, which is just, I hadn't done that in a long time, and it's hard. But, you see the faces
it's a very
of
difficult
victims, you see the families.
Yeah, it's a difficult event to cover. We went to a vigil, and here we were, putting a microphone in people's faces that are there at this vigil in Portland, Oregon, and sort of getting their feelings in real time. And we did, but it just felt intrusive. At the same time, it's just so important to give everyone a chance to speak their heart, speak their minds about this, too.
Well, if there's one video, I was just going to say, if there's one video piece of the news that stands out to me the most, it's when Anderson Cooper read the names of the victims.
Yes.
And it just, even just saying it gives me goosebumps. It clearly, he almost broke down, half a dozen times during it, but it was so powerful. It was so powerful because it was real. You cannot be a journalist and not be affected by this. It's ridiculous. Journalists are people, and especially for the LGBT and allied journalists. And I know a lot of LGBT journalists and those who are allies. It's really, it's gut-wrenching to cover this and have to be sort of walled off from the emotion around it and then, kind of deal with it after.
Yeah. I can tell you when it set in for me, because as most of our listeners know, 95% of our interviews are by phone, it's state to state. I'm in Portland, they're elsewhere around the nation or sometimes international. But right here in Portland, Oregon, for the vigil at the Q Center, when I went in person for coverage, and the photos of the victims were there, up in the window, and the candles,
yes.
and the vigil, and the mourners, that really was just such a personal moment for them and for me covering it. That's when it really started to sink in. And they blocked off streets in Portland. It wasn't even enough to just have folks stand in front of the Q Center. They had to block off multiple streets because over 2,000 people came to an impromptu vigil.
That's a lot of people for Portland. Yeah, that's a lot.
Yeah. Now, I want to ask you, you mentioned Trump, so we're speaking about hate and about these, old attitudes that are still alive. Human Rights Campaign just tweeted out, I'll read the exact tweet. It says, "This video is hard to watch, but everyone should. Real Donald Trump does not speak for us." And then a sub-note here, it says, "The Stop Hate is a campaign to save America from Donald Trump," which is wecanstophate.com. So without even seeing this particular clip, I assume that you already know exactly where you stand on Trump and where Trump really stands on the LGBT community. But he tried to reach out to them during Orlando. He tried to make a reach across the aisle and say that he is our candidate. Was that repulsive, shocking? What was your take on his attempt to sway LGBT voters in his direction?
Yeah. The bottom line is I know where I stand on Trump. I think the only place Trump stands for is for Trump. It's incredibly clear. The man, there's pathology there at this point. I think there's no denying that he's like a huge narcissist and will say anything and lie and make up stuff and act like, he's supportive one day, he's not supportive the next. He changes his mind on issues on a day-to-day basis. And the personal attacks on Hillary and on anyone else who doesn't support him is just awful. The way protesters are treated at his rallies is disgusting, racist. It's just, if anybody is fool enough to think that Donald Trump really cares about anybody but Donald Trump, including the people at his rallies, who I don't know why they're there. If they think they're going to be rich like him, they're smoking something. It's really just been surreal to watch, and it's actually embarrassing as an American. Like I said, I have a lot of family in Italy, and they are just appalled. The world is looking at us like we're idiots. Like, First of all, we elected Bush twice, not once, twice, Bush Jr. And now this, a reality star?
I always thought that was our darkest moment.
Horrifying.
That was that second election in 2004, and we were just on the phone with Basic Rights Oregon. That was the same year that we enacted a hate law in Oregon, banning same-sex marriages, and there were similar ballots, and they all got upvotes. We lost big that year, and so, but we have the presumptive nominee, Hillary Clinton, which is a advocate for the community, and President Obama has pledged to get out on the campaign trail, and he knows that she is a candidate that would carry forward his LGBTQ legacy.